Welcome back to the City Current Radio Show. I'm your host, Jeremy Park. We're honored to be with our next guest, Don Wright. He is a past president and current board member with the Tennessee Fisher House. And so, Don, how are you doing, sir?
Jeremy, I'm doing great and staying safe with COVID.
Hey, well, that's the idea. And you're also, too, helping the families of our heroes. So let's dive in. Give us some history for the Fisher House.
Real quick, back years ago, a gentleman named Zachary Fisher, who is a developer in New York City, had a friend who brought to his attention that families of veterans and active duty really had nowhere to stay if their loved one was in a hospital. And with some promotion with Mr. Fisher, the idea of the Fisher House came about, and we now have Fisher houses all over the nation and some in Europe.
Including in Tennessee. So talk about the local efforts. Yeah. Talk about the local, the Tennessee Fisher House. Give us some history on that with Murfreesboro and just kind of the local flavor of this.
The question often comes up is, why did you pick Murfreesboro? And let me say that, and I will probably mention later, but there's not much land around the VA in Nashville, and what land there is very expensive and very small. Also, a lot more of the procedures, medical procedures, happen at the VA here in Murfreesboro, the Alvin C Medical Center. And so we had some people get together and decide to put the Fisher House in Murfreesboro, which has been a blessing.
Talk about just when you look at the physical side, rooms, give us some of the stats in terms of families, give us some stats.
Some of the stats are that we have a 10,000 square foot house. It is all on one level in case someone is in a wheelchair. We have 12 suites that are in that facility. Now, I said suites. These are not hotel rooms. They are actually suites with a bed, a bath, a television, computer, and they are very classy on the inside. And so when a loved one has to stay, we want them to be comfortable, not have to deal with a sterile hotel room, and not putting down hotels. But if you've ever stayed in one, they're not the best place to be over a couple of days.
Well, and so I think, what you're talking about on your end is taking care of the families of the heroes who are protecting our freedoms and making it convenient, accessible, safe, but really comfortable for them to be able to stay together and to help heal. And study after study shows that if you've got your family nearby, your ability to heal is so much quicker and better, and keeping that family unit connected. And so I think there's a big part of just the family unit and the hope and the support network of being together that's a big part of this.
That is it. We feel like that having a loved one nearby is some of the best medicine you can give. And so we are on the grounds of the VA Medical Center here in Murfreesboro. People can walk. It is that close enough. If they want to drive and find a parking space, they can. They're not having to drive across town and deal with traffic in the city. They are right there on the premise. We have a lot of people who will stay at the hospital with their loved one. If the loved one says, I want to take a nap, then they can come back to the Fisher House and relax, get a cup of coffee, whatever they want to do, and then go back to the hospital and be with their loved one.
Give me some stats that put a smile on your face when you look at the dollars saved for the families, the impact, the number of stays. What are just a couple of stats that you would throw out there that put a smile on your face?
Well, I'm going to give you 2019 stats, Jeremy, because 2020 with COVID would obviously have been an odd year. But in 2019, we served 315 families. That meant we had over 520 individuals stay there. By the way, the average stay is 5 nights in our Fisher House. Interesting that we had guests from 31 states and the Puerto Rico stay in the Tennessee Fisher House. If those people had had to pay for lodging, and this is just lodging, it would have been over $230,000 for them to have in total for them to stay.
Yeah. For you personally, talk about your service on the board, your role as president. Why is this so important for you personally?
Personally, I've had family who served in World War I, World War II, Korea. I had a lot of classmates who served in Vietnam, and I am in my involvement through church and other organizations, people who've been to the Middle East. And having seen the smiles on people's faces when they know that there's a Fisher House, that they don't have to pay for anything. Everything is taken care of. And the only thing they have to worry about is that loved one. Just brings pride to my heart that we are serving the families. We are serving the veterans of the military, but we're also serving the families who've had to make that sacrifice. It's just heartwarming to be able to do that.
What's the feedback from the families? Because obviously you have a chance to kind of see it firsthand. What's the feedback from them in terms of how much it means to them?
You would be surprised the number of thank you notes we get and the hugs that are given as they leave the house. They become family with our house manager. The feedback is, this is awesome. You mean this isn't going to cost me anything, or this didn't cost me anything? They just can't believe it, that they've been able to spend 4 or 5 nights in a first-class facility and have their food taken care of, their room taken care of, their bed made up by someone else, and all the good things. And they come out with a wonderful experience.
Yeah, I think another piece of this too is being there together, not only for their families, but other families. You heal together, and there's a sense of camaraderie and support that I think is a neat piece of this as well. Talk about that side.
It is really interesting. A lot of the families who are there, obviously the only reason there is for their loved one. And at nighttime, when they're not over at the VA, someone would get together and cook meals together. And it's kind of like, hey, Mary, you cook the meatloaf and I'll cook the mashed potatoes and green beans. And they get to know each other and they bond friendships. They can then talk to other people about the issues that are going on in their life with their loved one. And the other person understands that situation. They can just bond on that. And so we've had long-term friendships develop with somebody who maybe is from Ohio to somebody who's in Florida, who's got family who's being taken care of at the VA.
Yeah. I love that side of it just too, of just the families coming together and being able to open up and share and create those friendships. Talk about Hero Miles. This is a neat side of it as well. So talk about Hero Miles.
The National Fisher House Foundation, the national umbrella that we come under, has miles donated to them. And if we have a situation where a family may need to go from Nashville to Bethesda, Maryland, and they cannot afford the airline, we have miles that are donated to us. Therefore, we can put them on a flight and fly them, and they stay in the Fisher House at Bethesda, Maryland, or in Charleston, South Carolina, or wherever they need to go. So it really, we try to take care of that family so it doesn't cost them anything, because if their loved one is going through any kind of medical procedure, they have already paid the sacrifice and they don't need to be paying anymore.
Share a little bit about the local side tied into the national, because obviously as you're mentioning at the onset, you've got the national side, but obviously the local side. So talk about autonomy, fundraising, the connectivity in terms of shared resources. What does that relationship look like?
Well, we do have the Fisher House Foundation, which is can be found at fisherhouse.org. They kind of set the rules and guidelines that each house has to go through. They tell us how to decorate the house. They tell us whether it needs to be one story, a 2-story. And so they kind of set the parameters that we have to live under. And then on the local level, we do get some funding from the Fisher House Foundation, especially when you start a house. They will help us, as did in Tennessee. They helped us get the house started, as well as our local donations. But they then turn that house over to the government. And at that point, our foundation then is responsible for taking care and doing small things. We just recently bought new water bottles for people who want to take their water with them. We bought some coffee mugs or tumblers that people can take with them. With COVID, we purchased some hand sanitizer they can slip into their wallet or purse. We bought lanyards with our logo on them. All this stuff has our logo on them, but everything that is purchased is in mind of what can the guest or clients, if we want to call them, do. So to go back on the foundation, they are the ones who have the big national sponsors, and I'm not going to try to go in, but I know that Uncle Paul Newman's salad dressings is a big supporter. Southwest Airlines is a big supporter, and others who have helped us. For your wine drinkers, Fanzia Wine, if you look on the spout, it has the Fisher House logo, and they support us. And so we can get those funds from them, but most of the funds that the home office gets really helps to start new houses.
Gotcha. You mentioned both, 2019, kind of being more normal, obviously 2020, not with the pandemic. And then obviously to your point about just hand sanitizer and a lot of things to make sure that the families are safe. Talk about some of the other impacts that COVID-19 and the pandemic has had on Tennessee Fisher House.
Well, we sadly our donations are down, but also understandable with the financial conditions family has been hit with. The VA actually cut back on a lot of the elective surgery that people were having done or delayed them. I will say that for a while, our house was honestly not being used. And so what we did, we opened up the house to some of the staff at the VA who were basically on call 24/7. So all they had to do was come across campus and use the Fisher House. So, and it was interesting because some of the staff wasn't really sure what the Fisher House was, and then they got to learn about what we were doing. So it had made that impact, and I can't guess, but I'm gonna guess. We probably were 25% occupancy in 2020, whereas in 2019 we were probably 75 to 80% occupancy. So that'll tell you the difference there.
Yeah. When you look at the community and obviously fundraising is a big piece of that, but how can the community help?
The community can always go to our website, TennesseeFisherHouse.org, and on there we have what call a wish list. And there is a list on there of items that we need, such as shampoo, and we do not ask for the hotel size, we ask for the full bottle. And those kind of things are listed. I can tell you right now, we do not need coffee. We have plenty of the cubes that people use, the little containers for coffee. But there's several items on there. But the toiletries that we get, we've had people show up with basically no clothes on their back because they came in the ambulance with their loved one. We've gone and bought clothes for them. The financial contributions, we buy gift cards. If they want to go buy their own food, they can. There are several grocery stores around the campus of the VA. They can go use them at a restaurant. They are welcome to do that. They do have to bring us the receipt, make sure we're not buying happy hour drinks instead of food. And I will have to say that on the Fisher House, no alcohol is allowed on the premise, no tobacco is allowed on the premise. So we do keep them clean in that way. There are just several other things we can try to take care of for the families with the donations we receive. As I said, we have bought some of the promotional type items. And yes, people go, well, is that really for the families? Yes. I have here one of the little lanyards. They can slip their electronic key in there. The women can put their money in there. They don't have to take their purse over to VA. Everything is secured in the locked rooms. And so there's little things that we've done is just make it easy on the family. Let them, as I said earlier, let them worry about the loved one and nothing else.
Yeah. And I've got to believe too, for companies, especially for the companies that maybe do promotional products and things like that, those are some ways that they can help with in-kind donations. And to your point, making it really easy for the families who stay there, like the lanyards, that keeps them safe and that gives them access. So little things like that really do make a big difference for the families, both to protect them, but to make it more easy and comfortable for them to stay. So share a little bit of just, on your end, what's maybe one or two other things that you want everyone to know about the Tennessee Fisher House?
Well, the biggest thing is this costs a family to stay with us nothing, zero, nada. Everything is taken care of for them when they're inside the house. We have a lot of the families who will stay with us and then turn around when they get home and write us a check as a donation. And it's nowhere near what it would have cost them if they had to pay in rent. And I'm going to say, and this is no disrespect to any hotel chain, but let's say if you were staying a Motel 6 or a Red Roof Inn in Murfreesboro, it's still going to cost you $70, $80 a night. Well, all right, you're going to be here for 10 nights. That's almost $1,000. And so if you stayed in our Fisher House, you just saved $1,000 that you maybe did not have to spend. As I said, we're going to feed you. We're going to take care of you. You don't have to go buy shampoo or anything. And so I think that's the biggest impact that we do with our donations. Just it doesn't cost them anything, and we want them to be there with a loved one. Now, let me throw out, Jeremy, that they do need to live at least 50 miles away. We are not a hotel, so if you're a veteran family coming through, you can't stop and spend the night with us. We're not a homeless shelter. We are a facility that strictly takes care of the family, the veterans that are undergoing the treatment.
Yeah. Well, make sure everyone check them out. Tennessee Fisher House, and Tennessee is spelled out. So TennesseeFisherHouse.org. And Don, thank you, sir, for all you and your team do. Greatly appreciate it. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you, Jeremy. I appreciate the opportunity. Have a good one.